There's a mental shift that definitely needs to happen because I think when you're in an operator role, a lot of times you're used to being hands-on and a person doing the thing. And I think for strategy, there's a mental shift of like, you know, idyllic state, you're freeing your mind a little bit to kind of just like explore, ask a lot of questions. Patagonia has reached a point where, we spent a year and a half talking about like what's the right size for our business. Should we be a $2 billion, $4 billion brand? Or should we stay smaller? Maybe your customers evolved over time. The average customer on digital was 45 plus. And by the time I left 4 years later, we were down into the 20s, 30s. And, we definitely moved the age down. And that was a lot from our communication channels that we were using. The biggest tip I have to be successful in whatever strategies you're executing is to bring people along as early as possible. Help them help you.
So yeah, it's going to be about time. And for those who have joined us already, I'm Sonakshi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Manifest, and I'm also the creator of the community Roaring Ladies of E-commerce. It's a community dedicated for the women in the e-commerce ecosystem. And the mission that we have with this community is to empower each and every one of us, whether it's about career, whether it's professionally related or related to personal life. There are a bunch of women. We are about 900 folks across e-commerce ecosystem helping each other out, whatever may be the reason. So we'll also share the link over chat throughout our session multiple times. If you're not part of the community yet, please do join us. We have exciting things happening all across the Slack channel. So thank you so much for taking our time. Like we'll begin shortly. We'll just let a couple of more folks join us. Today we have an amazing guest speaker with us. I can't wait to introduce her to all of you. But yeah, thank you so much for taking out time today for us. Super excited. We'll just begin shortly. I think, okay, it's time. So, a very warm welcome to each one of us who have joined to our Ask Me Anything session. Today, our guest speaker is Angela. She was the former VP of Digital at Patagonia. And she has seen massive success in her entire career of probably more than 30 years. And she has worked with amazing companies like Elf Beauty, Levi's, naming a few, and she has done massive work contributing towards women community already. So a very warm welcome, Angela, to our community today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to join this because we all know this is a space where sometimes we're like the only woman, or there's been more and more women. So it's great to have these communities. Nice to meet everyone.
Amazing, Angela. So, guys, today, the agenda of the Ask Me Anything is very similar to how we do that in every session that we have. And that is, we have got tons of questions from you guys. We'll cover each one of them one by one. But if you have any further questions, feel free to put that on chat or even on Slack, post this session. We are going to cover it. So, let's get started. Angela, over to you. If you can, little bit tell about yourself in one or two lines on how has been your journey so far, and how it looks like as a woman having a massively successful career for beyond 30 years.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll go a little backwards. So, like I said, most recently I've been at Patagonia about 4 years. It was a pretty big step up role for me. It was a business probably 5 times the size of True Religion that I was running before. A much bigger team. I went from a team of, I think, maybe 10 people to a team of almost 60 people. And so it was definitely some moments of fake it till you make it type situation, but it was an incredible learning experience. I've probably spent the last 10 years solely in digital, solely in e-commerce. I've worked a lot in apparel. I've also worked in the home furnishing world, Pottery Barn, to name one. That's what moved me out to California many years ago. My career started in merchandising. I was a merchandiser for a department store. Then I moved into doing product development and product design, physical product. And then I really love direct to consumer. And because of my age, direct to consumer was catalog before it was digital. And so I was working in catalog business, Spiegel catalog being another one that I worked for many years, and the Pottery Barn catalog. And from that, what I loved about direct to consumer, because I didn't really love the store experience as a merchandiser, I love that I combined my mathematical brain of being able to get real feedback from customers and data, which we now call it, and that responsiveness, and then be able to communicate to customers through photo and through text, which kind of fed the creative side of my brain. So to me, it was like a perfect storm, and I've really enjoyed digital over the last couple of a decade or so because it's just always evolving, like there's always new channels, there's always new ways to think of and talk about acceleration now is just like next level. And so like it's a really exciting time. It's also a really challenging time. And so there are moments where I'm just really glad I've had so many different experiences with so many different brands, so many different types of leaders, so many different types of teams that I really, really draw from every day now. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing, Angela. And since you mentioned digital couple of times while talking about yourself, we would love to start from there, like what it means to handle a digital team, you being VP of digital at Patagonia, what it means to handle a digital team, like if you can cover a little bit about what were your North Star metric being VP of digital and like how was your team structured there?
Yeah, so Patagonia was definitely a little unique. You obviously have your normal KPIs of, sales, conversion, traffic. But at Patagonia, my conversion metrics are probably a little softer than they would have been at a brand like True Religion. That was a brand I was with previously. At that brand, it was a highly promotional brand. So we're always constantly trying to get people to see what's happening for the latest drops and things of that nature. And Patagonia is pretty much the opposite, right? Like we have the same core product for the majority of it. It's not fast fashion. It's not anywhere. It's on the opposite end of the spectrum. We want you to buy something and have it forever. And then there's a lot of services and benefits at Patagonia that you don't have at other brands. So you might have the ability to trade in something, the ability to buy used. They had all these other brand entities that were very disparate. So for me, that role was really about the engagement of getting customers involved in a brand who really believed in a brand and maybe didn't know that they could trade something in and get money and buy a new one if they want one, or they could repair their favorite item, or that we sell food. Like all these things are happening, or communicate or participate in some of our missions to save the home planet. So a lot of my goals were really around not only we're more long term. So that long lifetime value metric again became more than just transactional. It also is about how could I have people visit most frequently, participate maybe in an activism mission, participate in some other things as well. So those were some of the things that made it a very unique experience. I had a very broad team, so I had site experience, I had an operations team, I had a product development team that worked on customer experience, user facing on the site. I had customer analytics team, which is really fun because I love data and insights so much, and I think it's so powerful to help us do our jobs. I also had a secondary website called Patagonia Action Works, and that was a non-for-profit angle of our company. So they support grassroots organizations. And then I feel like I'm missing a team that I had, and then I had digital marketing, of course. So those were sort of all the teams that I had that worked across. Yeah. So That's pretty much what
Got
I
it.
ran. Yeah.
Got it, Angela. Makes sense. And since there were so many teams, and you said the mission of the brand is more long term, instead of thinking little bit transactional and thinking on let's say on a monthly or a quarterly basis. So how were you exactly going about planning your quarter or planning your annual operating plan? Was it keeping a goal in mind that this is
Yeah.
where I want to improve a metric? Yeah, yeah, Angela.
Yeah, so absolutely, it's sales goals. So, my growth metrics were slower because it was a bigger brand, more established. But then I usually would break this down. This is something, a practice I started at Levi. I see a former Levi colleague on the call, where we would actually say like, okay, if I have a 10% sales growth coming for the next year, what are the levers that I think I can utilize to get that sales growth? So, do I think I can throw a bunch of marketing dollars and get a bunch of new traffic and then that way, I have my traffic metrics where I'm going to really lean into, or do I think like actually my retention's really, really strong? So, can I lean into retention? Does that mean I actually going to expand my SMS campaigns or whatever that might be? And so, I'm going to take down my traffic goal and lean more into the conversion goal, or maybe the product is changing and maybe we're introducing some more high value product, or we're doing bundles, or our AOV is going to increase. So then I'm going to put pressure more on there. So really kind of looking at like what the business plan is and what the strategy is for product. I'll just use apparel as an example. Is there some new, product category that's really exciting that we think we're going to break through? Elf Cosmetics is a great one. When I was there, they had just introduced skincare. And the difference between color cosmetics versus skincare is you get a skincare customer, they don't change much, right? They're more loyal. So that kind of changed the strategy of how I would think about growth going on now that we've introduced this whole new product category. And so sort of thinking about those things sort of helped me define like which KPIs I want to lean on. And then I try to build like a multiple scenario, like best case scenario, like a high, medium, low, so, and then I kind of calibrate and play with those KPIs to kind of get to that goal. So ideally, I always tell my team I like to have three different paths to get to my target. So if for some reason, marketing budgets are always the first thing to get cut in a tough year. So I might say like, oh, I've got X amount of dollars and I'm gonna have this huge marketing growth. And then, 2 months in, somebody might say like, ah, JK, we're taking 20% of your marketing budget. Now I gotta pivot, right? And so instead of starting from scratch, have a backup plan already, whatever, like, okay, well, maybe I spent all that money on marketing and maybe those people don't convert as well as I thought. So I need to lean into something else, like what's gonna be my backup plan? So to me, that's the fun part of it. It's challenging, but I think that's really fun.
Yeah, that's super amazing, Angela. And now I could correlate why you said customer analytics team was your favorite team. This is amazing. And following up to this, there was a question from our audience which was around, exactly this, what you said. How does Patagonia customize its launch strategies by region? And like you said, Angela, like, there were different SKUs you guys were launching, there were bundles that you were bringing in. So, were your launch strategies dependent on region at all when it
Mm.
comes to digital, or how did you strategize it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I only ran the North America website. That being said, I worked a lot with my cross-functional teams around the globe. And so Patagonia is an organization where we had multiple offices. So there's an EMEA office, there's a LATAM office, we had an APAC office as well. And some of those platforms around the world were on the same platform as our North America platform. So EMEA and Japan, any changes we made to the site impacted their business as well. So we had to build really strong partnerships with those teams to make sure, changes and things that we're doing aren't doing detriment to their business. They might have unique things that they're doing. And then the other regions were on different platforms. So us being the biggest business, a lot of times they relied on us as sort of like what tactics we were working on, where we were going with things. But they had some flexibility to do their own, regional activities. I think when I was at Levi, it was a little bit different where we had very disparate businesses around the world and we tried to centralize it all in San Francisco. And so what happened with that team was we would actually we kind of would bring in other regions, and then we would actually test new things in a smaller region, which is really smart because then you could kind of learn a little bit and then bring it back to the bigger North America business, and then we kind of travel it around the globe that way, which I learned a ton from that experience as well.
That's also amazing and a good, learning point in terms of when you end up working with partners across the globe, you get to learn a lot how your brand is perceived in that region as well, Angela. And to that, there was another question from audience, which was, how do you balance staying true to your brand identity while still pushing for online growth? And especially when it's, such a
Yeah.
global brand where there are so many regions involved, how do you stay true to your brand's identity?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's pretty easy there because it's so clear on what our mission is. And the challenging part is you spend a lot of time thinking and reevaluating. And, there have been times where I'm like, I don't have all the same levers that I had at a previous brand. Like, we don't do paid advertising on Instagram or any meta property. So we had to use other tools. So we leaned into CTV more. We leaned into Pinterest. Like, Pinterest was like, nobody cared about Pinterest at other brands I worked for, but it had a lot of meaning for us at Patagonia. And so, trying to just find where there are those glimmers of light and hope and lean into those things. And then, the reason I came to Patagonia is I really wanted to be more challenged. Like, I just kind of really lost interest of working for brands that are only messages to be on sale and the latest color of the season, like that just kind of got old for me. So to be able to lean into storytelling and have really meaningful things to talk about and engage with was what drew me to Patagonia. So what that meant is at times you'd have really drawn out meetings and really drawn out conversations about things to try to get to that place. But I think the brand internally has so much clarity on like what makes Patagonia tick that um, it's pretty easy to kind of feel when you're kind of going off the rails a little bit. And everyone there is, really quick to raise their hand and be like, I don't know if this really works. And, everyone really challenges everybody. I like to say that it's like a community of activists. Like people have very strong opinions. And so you do it's a very communal business as well. There's a lot of communal leadership. So you talk through a lot of things. I think sometimes that could be challenging. You're used to working like really fast and kind of moving on to the next thing. Like I work for brands is like just fly the plane as you're building it. And that's not Patagonia's mentality. And so trying to find that happy balance because I am a little bit of an impatient person. And so I like to see results quickly and I like to test and learn things really fast. But there are some times where it's just like this is an area to protect. And I think that actually means a lot of times that our growth plans and our conversions and tactics are not as aggressive as other brands because if I were to implement a new tool like we were starting to build a web app idea, I would take whatever the norms are and pretty much cut them in half because I'm like I know that I don't have these like 10% offers to sign up or whatever these things are that a lot of people use to kind of hook people in. It's going to be a longer road, so therefore let's just take the pressure off ourselves and set it at an expectation that makes sense for the brand.
Absolutely, Angela. And the one thing that you said very interesting when you started answering this question was it's easy for you because there was a clear mission in place from Patagonia. And usually we have seen a lot of, especially the emerging brands that are coming in, struggle with having that clarity in mind, having a fixed mission. Instead of that, a lot of brands keep going towards the trends. And like you said, going aggressive and then giving out discounts, etc. So tell us a little bit about if, what do you think if a brand is at a very early stage, let's say doing a 10 or a $20 million kind of a revenue run rate currently, how do they stick to a single mission? Like what are those top two, three priorities or, sets that you think they should have in mind and define the mission?
Yeah, I think you have to take some time to do an assessment of like, whatever the brand mission is. Like I do this every year with with the brand I even work for, right? What's the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve? And that a lot of times doesn't change year to year. It's pretty consistent. how we want to achieve it might be the thing that changes. So I really lean into like what can be the most impactful thing because there's a thousand things we're gonna do. Like we're all in eComm, right? Like there's like so many software tools, there's so many things we could be doing. And a lot of times it's like, okay, well, what's out of, stack rate those things out of the 10 things that we could actually implement this year, what are the three things that are going to make the most impact? We can't do all the things on our wish list. What are the things that we think can drive the biggest impact, however we want to measure impact? Impact might be growth, might be followers, it might be overall customer growth, or it might just be sales revenue, or it might be frequency of purchase, whatever that might be. And then I try to think about and then test and learn and research. I love communities like this. I I use them heavily. I like to talk to other people who have similar roles in mine and be like, hey, I'm getting all these pitches about, a new, agentic AI for chatbot or whatever it might be. Um, have you seen success in that? Or, I've worked for this company. I see that you guys are using that same company. Like, what's going on with that? And what I love about these communities, is I think a lot of people are really open to discussing, at least if they've seen successes or wins or what some of their challenges might be. Like, they're a great service provider, but here's some things to watch out for. We tried them, then we moved to this, and here's why, and that may or may not apply to your business. I think that's just such a valuable tool that I've learned pretty late in my career, but it's a reason I'm in like three different women's organizations right now because that are around retail in particular, because it's just invaluable. A lot of people do, you only have so many resources, people, money, time. So you're trying to find how to use that most effectively and efficiently. So a lot of reflection. I like to, like I said, I love to look into data and see like, what are the customers kind of telling us that they want from us. So, doing surveys, kind of getting feedback from your core customer, is really important too.
Absolutely, Angela. And since you mentioned data, let me, cover this question from audience, which was, I want to grow my skills in data analysis and strategy. Where should I even begin?
That is a great question. Because it's something I'm so passionate about that I actually designed a college course about it at FITM some years ago and teaching digital analytics, especially because I think ecom, people come from so many different types of backgrounds, that not everybody even understands like how much we lean into data until they get into a role and you're like, holy crap, like how am I gonna, get into this? So if you can find a mentor, that would be helpful. Um, I wish I could think of like a single source. You might give me an idea of what to do with my free time. But uh yeah, I think a lot of times like I've often, you're in those meetings and that person who just kind of has it and gets it. Like I'd be like, can I grab lunch with you? Like, I think a lot of times, and this is something that I've been really mindful of, like, even in the group, like the Monday meetings, where people go through recaps of business or whatever there is. And our brand it was on Tuesdays. And, the digital marketing people are spewing out all these acronyms and all these things and charts and things. And sometimes I'll just pause and be like, does everyone understand like what's happening here? And some people don't want to say it in that meeting. But I think it's important to be like, maybe your company can do brown bag lunches where, you can ask somebody who's running digital analytics, like, could you guys just teach us like a one-on-one? Just don't assume everybody knows what AOV means. Don't assume everybody knows what all these KPIs are, key performance indicators. So why don't, like, and you'd be surprised how many times people are like, oh yeah, like they want to nerd out on that stuff. Like, yeah, I'd be glad to do a brown lunch session on that and just answer people's questions or just go through like find a report that's there and find somebody who can like, just walk you through each one. Like, how do you if AOV goes up, like the relationship between the KPIs, I think is something that I really like to teach people, at least because I've always run a merchandising team as well. Is like the difference between like why we say if conversion suddenly goes up that we will expect this other thing to drop, or if traffic has doubled, of course the conversion is going to drop. But where does it make sense and why? When should we be alarmed by it? When shouldn't we be alarmed by it? So to me, it's almost more important to know the relationship part of it. But you can reach out to me, I'd love to chat with you about it. Not a problem. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
So kind of you, Angela. Our community, please do make a note. She's more than happy to help each one of
Yeah.
us here.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit more. I'm sure there's some great resources out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And following to this question, there was another one, Angela, which was around what advice do you have for someone going from operator, like an e-commerce manager role, to a strategic leader?
Mhm. Um, I think my best advice is like there's a mental shift that definitely needs to happen because I think when you're in an operator role, a lot of times you're used to being hands-on and a person doing the thing. And I think for strategy, there's a mental shift of like, you know, idyllic state, you're freeing your mind a little bit to kind of just like explore, ask a lot of questions, don't assume that you know the answer. Like to me, that's the best things. Like I don't assume I know my customer. The brand thinks the customer is this. Like what does the data tell me about those things? And then kind of form my ideas from there. And then I think the biggest tip I have to be successful in whatever strategies you're executing is to bring people along as early as possible. Help them help you orchestrate what that strategy is. So, what I mean by that is um, I needed to push a revolutionary change on the digital experience on eComm because we were just in this conundrum of just having so much technical debt, like so much work that's behind the scenes that needs to be done, but the site's starting to feel old. And of course, leadership wants the shiny thing, but you have to stabilize the platform and do all the non-sexy stuff. And so what I did was like I knew what I wanted to build. And so I brought in, I talked to the head of creative a lot. Like we sat down, like, well, what's your vision? Because he has a lot of power and authority of sort of what the site looks like. Like, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts about that? And then I'd go over to the head of IT and I'm like, I'm starting to think about an idea about how can I like have a completely different user experience? And I know I'm going to rely on your engineering team. And this and like, have you been thinking about this idea? And can I share with you sort of my thoughts? And I'd love to get your input. And so when you start to do that, you're starting to build advocates for your idea and strategy. And that's the secret behind it, right? So then once you've kind of started to culminate it and get that idea and get that strategy sort of really to a place that feels really tight, now when you go pitch that idea to leadership or somebody, you've got advocates, you've got people who already buy in. And to me, the most powerful thing with the strategy is that the strategy or idea keeps going even when you're not in the room to advocate for it, because other people really get it, they understand it, they're like, yeah, I know, well, Angela and I talked about that already, and yeah, do you think we should be investing in that? Like, yeah, I do, and here's the 5 things that she's thinking about. And I love to like build a strategy where I feel like everybody feels like they're winning. That can't always be the case, but most times you can find a win for them and a win for yourself. And then you've got like, then it's just like, a steamship is just going to go. So I think I really learned that trick actually at Levi.
Yeah. This is super smart, Angela, and such a great key takeaway for all of us here. It's such an amazing trick. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, just there was another very interesting question which I feel we should cover before time passes by us. Is most brands stall at 100 to 200K per month. How do you scale past it? And I really feel it's a genuine, problem statement that I keep
Yeah.
seeing, keep hearing from a lot of brands. So yeah, Angela, let us know, like, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah. I think those are the points where you have to sort of assess, is the stagnation in growth market share? Is it, maybe you're the biggest player in the market now, or you own such a large piece of that market share that it's going to force you to think about product expansion or a new category to enter into, or, um, there's a life cycle to every brand. I think Patagonia has reached a point where, we spent a year and a half talking about like, what's the right size for our business? Should we be a $2 billion, $4 billion brand? or should we stay smaller, depending on what it is we're trying to accomplish. So I think those sort of breakthroughs really kind of go like it's a good opportunity to go back and assess again, like I was saying, like I think we can I think a lot of times we tell our own narrative of what our customer is and what our customer wants from us. And that's a really good time to sort of dig in and see if there's signals there that are opportunities that maybe you hadn't thought of, or maybe your customers evolved over time. I think that's the thing, the biggest thing I did in 4 years at True Religion, I mean, at Patagonia was, the average customer on digital was 45 plus. And by the time I left 4 years later, we were down into the 20s, 30s. And, we definitely moved the age down. And that was a lot from our communication channels that we were using, the channels which we were talking to people in, and some of the sales tactics of product, like leaning into used product. We found that like younger customers were buying our e-commerce goods versus, brand new products. And so, there's things like that you can kind of utilize to kind of see where you might have some wins, and then hopefully there's easy ways to test into it that doesn't cost a lot of money to kind of learn if there's opportunities there.
Absolutely, Angela, and hope, like totally agreeing, you should understand if there's a market cap that you've reached already and then take off from there. Yeah, Angela, it was super exciting. And before we wrap up, one last question, which we ask everyone, one
Yeah.
piece of advice for each one of us here in this community. And uh, just extending to that advice, also, a piece of motivation that you can give to each one of us, and, that would enable all of us to, at least foresee the career that you have seen in last 30 years.
Yeah, so I think a really easy one is take someone lunch that you don't know, that you work with. Like, there's just such a power in just kind of connecting with people one to one. And a lot of times I'm like, I just had open calendar time. Like, whoever wants to meet me, like, let's meet. Or just sometimes like, there's something about that person seems really cool. I just want to get to know them and see what that's about. And it's amazing what comes out of those connections. I think that's a big one. And then secondly, just know you're doing awesome. Like, don't I think we're so hard on ourselves. Like, it's really challenging times right now. Like, I've seen a lot. Like I said, I've been here 30 plus years in the industry. Like, the things that are happening in the industry right now, one is accelerated pace. There's so many challenges. And just give yourself grace. Like, you guys are all smart. You're gonna figure it out and know that, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. I think we need to hear that more these days.
Absolutely.
This was
With
fun. This went
this,
by so fast.
yeah. Have fun in your journey.
Yeah,
That's
it's
also very
important.
important. Yeah. Amazing, Angela. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We have our community link. If you're not still part of it, go ahead, join us. And we have Angela there. So if you have any further question, feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Angela, for
Thank
taking out time
you.
today.
Thanks.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.